Good evening, guys, and welcome to everyone already sat in the chat room. I'm really looking forward to tonight. So tonight we're going to do a full flight tutorial talking through every step as we go in an attempt to help anyone here that wants to learn to fly the Airbus A320. I am using the Airbus A320 by FlyByWire, so the NX version. So if you've got that mod, then that's great. If not, I certainly do recommend you go and download it. It basically makes the aircraft much more pleasurable to fly, much more realistic, and the work that the FlyByWire guys are doing is just phenomenal. Not to mention, of course, that that it is all for free. So that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to talk us through the setup as well. I am aware that not all of you, particularly if you are new to the world of Flight Simulator, will have access to Navigraph charts. I'm going to try and refer to them as little as possible in terms of that. However, I know a lot of you do have Navigraph charts as well, so I will be helping you along with those in terms of reading them and deciphering what it is we're doing. But essentially, I want to try and make this tutorial open to everybody. So whether it's your first time in the aircraft, or whether you're a little bit of an intermediate, you're quite happy flying it, but you just want to take the flying to the next level. So hopefully, yeah, we can try and delve in a bit deeper. But of course, if it's your first time, then we'd love you to fly along. All right. So as you can see, I'm not actually set up in the aircraft just yet. So what I'm going to do, I'll tell you what I first need to do. I need to pop my cursor on so you guys can see what it is I'm actually clicking. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight is a flight from Bilbao in the north of Spain up to London Gatwick. So let's go ahead and get that set up. Now, in terms of the flight plan, I create all my flight plans using SimBrief, which I've referred to before if any of you are have seen the channel in the past and the live streams that we do. Basically, it is a free flight planning software, and it creates operational flight plans, or OFPs as I may refer to them, which are very, very realistic looking. So I say it's well worth checking that out, and I do have a very detailed SimBrief tutorial coming up very soon. However, if you haven't got a flight plan sorted, it doesn't matter, because for those of you that are going to fly along with me, then I'm going to give you access to my flight plan. If you've got the A320NX and you're sat with your simulator running, get yourself on the ground here at Bilbao, and you can load my flight plan in through the FlyByWire A320. So I'm just going to go ahead and select a gate here. So gate 1 sounds good. I'm not flying on VATSIM tonight. I'm not flying on any multiplayer. There's just going to be me in the simulator. So I suggest, if you want to fly with me, of course, fly along with me. Get the YouTube video, this live stream, on a tablet or a second screen somewhere, and basically I want us to fly through this together. And of course, I'm going to try and go slower than what I would normally do in the streams, so I can answer any questions that that you may have. What I will do is I'll go through sort of section by section, and then any questions you've got, please do ask, and I'll come to them as well. I've got the chat window up so I can see all you guys, so thanks very much. I can see you all chatting away. Really looking forward to tonight. It is obviously night time in Europe. I am going to spin the I'm going to use live weather, but I am going to spin the clock back to daylight. So we're not doing the tutorial in we're not going to do the tutorial in night time. Stevie G, did the lady wife forgive me for last night? Yeah, she did. Well, she understands. You know, when I say go around, she just rolls her eyes at me. But she's used to it. It just meant the dog had to cross his legs a little longer. Okay, so let's set gate 1 for our departure. So there we go. As I say, we're going to use, I'm not using any multiplayer as you can see, but we'll use live weather. Once we get into the aircraft, I'm going to roll the time back. Okay, so let's hit fly, and this should start to load within within the next few minutes. For anybody that wants to actually pop their own route in, or if you're not flying with SimBrief, there I've just popped into the chat so you can copy and paste that down onto your notepad or whatever. That is the actual route that we're using this evening. So the MAPA 3 Alpha departure, standard instrument departure, taking off from runway 30. Nicola, so is it possible to roll the time of day back but keep real weather? Yes, of course it is. Yes, absolutely. This is exactly what I'm doing now. So basically you set up, as we're doing right now, live weather, live time. So when this loads in a moment, it will be dark. We'll get into the flight deck and then we'll just scroll the clock back. Paul, I'm using the I'm actually not using either the stable or development version of the current fly-by-wire mod. I'm using their experimental version, which has their custom fly-by-wire experimental version built in. It's just a lot nicer to fly. So yeah. What I will do as well is, let me just grab you guys the current METAR. So as I say, I want this to be open to all levels of simmers, so whether it's your first time. So the METAR is basically the weather. So let me just pop, this is the current weather that we can expect to see here at Bilbao. So let me just pop that in for you. Okay, so as you can see in the chat there, that is the current weather. The first bit of text is the airport code, Lima Echo Bravo Bravo. This weather report was generated on the 6th of the month at 9:30 Zulu, so it's only about 8 minutes old. The wind's 300 at 4 knots, so nice and light. However, they are variable in the direction that they're blowing, so we need to be a little bit aware of that, but they are very light, only 4 knots, nothing too much to worry about. Visibility is 9999, which basically means pretty much unlimited in aviation sense, so we're quite happy with that. Scattered clouds at 4,000 feet, broken clouds at 6,000 feet. The temperature is 9 degrees, and the QNH is 1008. So what is the QNH? 1008, that is basically the setting that we need to tell our barometer to read, so that it is working correctly. It also says there tempo. What does that mean? So tempo just means temporarily. It's actually temporarily visibility at 4,000 meters or 4 kilometers because it's raining. Okay. Well, it might not be exactly like this in the simulator, but it will be close. Alright, so I'm going to click ready to fly. And as you can see, it is dark. I don't want to do this tutorial in the dark, so I'll just wait for that menu to load at the top. Here it comes. So that menu is now loaded. And if we just click on the weather, and then we're just going to roll it back. But we're keeping the live weather. We're just rolling back the time of day. So I've just set that to what is that? That's 6 hours behind, isn't it? 1939. So that's fine. So that's better. We're now on. We're still on real live weather, but we're using the live time. So first things first, let's have a little look around. The runway we're going to be departing from is runway 30, which is that one behind us, just over here. So the taxi isn't too long, so that's quite nice. So what do we need to do? First thing, let's get inside. So everything's cold and dark. It's all turned off and we've not done anything. The first thing that we should do is get the airfield's ATIS, which is the Automatic Terminal Information Service. We can't actually do this in the simulator without firing the aircraft up. However, what a normal pilot would do is they would be in their briefing room and the ATIS they can get inside the airport. We've got the METAR, which is good enough for us. So we know that we're going to be departing on runway 30 and that the QNH is 1008. The other thing I would say is when flying, always have scraps of paper with you so you can jot stuff down. And as I say, I'm going to try and go through everything really slowly throughout this evening and give you the chance to ask any questions as we go. So ultimately, we need to start setting up the aircraft. Now, before we put any power on, either the batteries or the external power, we want to check a couple of things. Number one, we want to check that the landing gear is down, which sounds very straightforward, but if the landing gear lever is up for some reason, someone's been in the flight deck cleaning, and that's up, and you power up the aircraft, you're going to have an expensive accident. So landing gear needs to be down, thrust levers need to be at idle, and another key thing is make sure your windscreen wipers are turned off. Now these are all things which in the flight simulator they are pretty much set as standard. So Tom, that is a very good question. Where do you get the METAR from? Alright, I'm going to give you a link to a website, and I use it for several things, including the takeoff performance calculations. So you might want to get this up as well, because we are going to be using it in a little while. Alright, so okay, guys, hopefully we should be back with you. Great little start. Let me know, guys, in the chat if you can see that we're back with you. I believe we're there. I believe we're back with you again. Okay, Jake says we're back. That's great. Paul, we're back. All good. Fantastic. All right, let's carry on. So, where did we lose you? Okay, so this is the takeoff performance calculator page, which I just gave you a link to. Now, the way I get the METAR is simply type in the code of the airport that you wanted to get the METAR from. So in this case, Lima Echo Bravo Bravo. Hit the METAR button, and there's the METAR that I basically just copied and pasted you. So there you've got the METAR for Bilbao. So there we go. Oh, right, okay. Well, note that in the tech log for for later. It wouldn't be a live stream if something didn't go wrong, would it? Okay, so I'm going to come back to that page in a moment. Let's just get that down for now. All right. So with that, then let's go ahead and look at setting up the aircraft. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on these batteries. So battery 1 and 2, let's turn those on. And you might hear a few clicks and things like that. What we would then do, you can see that you've got external power is available. Well, if we have a quick look outside, you can see the APU, the GPU, the ground power unit, is sat just here, but it's not actually anywhere near the aircraft. So if you want to be ultra realistic, you can then go ahead, contact ground services, tune to the ground, and request the power supply. So we'll just go ahead and do that.
Ground Airbus Golf, Echo Zulu Golf Sierra, could you please send a ground power unit?
Airbus Golf, Echo Zulu Golf Sierra, ground power unit is on the road.
Okay, so the ground power unit is now on its way to us. Here we go. So that's just to add a little bit more realism to the flight. Once that's there, we can then turn on our external power. There we are. So then you get now to hear a lot more noises, the fans clicking in, a few relays and things like that. So there we are. Kevin, do you normally have to ask ATC twice? Oh, fair enough. I've not had to do that. Scandi941, I'm not on any network. I am just on my own, just so I can concentrate on the tutorial we're giving. Okay, so we've now given power to the aircraft. We now need to go through the cockpit preparation setup of the aircraft before we look at programming in the flight management guidance system. Alright, so the first thing to note is that the Airbus and the way that it works is basically, if you see any lights on the overhead panel, they require your attention. So a good overhead panel has no lights. So let's go ahead and start what we call the flows, and that's basically a flow of things that we do as we go up the panels to get them in working order. So we want to turn on the crew oxygen supply. That's basically the supply to the masks if we needed them in case of depressurization. We then move all the way up to the very top, and we come to the 3 switches at the top, the ADIRs, and these are basically essentially 3 gyroscopes in computers in the aircraft, and they look after the aircraft's pitch, and they work out if we're rolling, if we're yawing, if we're banking, things like that. They need to be turned on before we can move the aircraft anywhere. The correct order to do this is we want to turn them on to, if you can see where it says nav, so just click them once. So that's IR1. We then turn on IR2, and then we turn on IR3 just here. Okay, and the reason that they're numbered, not 1, 2, 3, is essentially you've got, this is the pilots, this is the first officers, and then you've got a backup as well. Alright, now that normally takes about 7 minutes for those to actually kick in, and if you come down here onto the top, what's called the ECAM screen, it says IR alignment will be greater than 7 minutes. Well, that's fine, we're not going to finish setting up in the next 7 minutes, so that's absolutely fine. Okay, we're now going to come down to the center part of the overhead panel. We're going to now turn on the navigation and logo lights, and this is basically the lights on the ends of the wings, which the green and red lights, it basically lets people know that there are people in the aircraft operating in it. So that's our navigation and logo lights on. We're then going to turn on the seatbelt signs. We're going to turn on the no smoking signs or no portable devices signs, as it may be in your FlyByWire A320. And we're then going to turn on the emergency exit signs. And we only want to put those onto arm. Don't put them on, you'll scare everyone. You just want to put them to arm in case we need them. We're then going to continue to go all the way up and, as I say, extinguish any white lights that you've got. And these are the fuel pumps, so we're just going to go across, turn on all the fuel pumps. The next thing we can do then is the fire test. So we want to do the engine 1 fire test. We'll just press and hold, that's working correctly. The engine 2 fire test, and then the auxiliary power unit, the APU fire test. Let's pop that on. There we go. Now what you can't see is, as you're running those fire tests, you've actually got warnings coming up here on the upper ECAM. If you want to try that and see what the warnings are, if you press on your keyboard the right Alt key, then your little mouse cursor turns into a plus, and select that. You're not going to be able to see that in the stream the way I've got it set up. But if you're in the simulator at the moment, try that, and then try pressing one of these, and you will see engine 1 fire. Basically, it gives you a checklist of what to run through if you get a fire warning. So that's great. So that is essentially, after that, that is the main overhead panel now all set up. The only thing left to do then is to actually start the auxiliary power unit. Now, depending on which airport you are at, you can either start these straight away, or some airports require you to leave those and start those not more than 10 minutes before you're actually pushing back. But for the sake of this tutorial, we can go ahead and start those now. So we start the APU by turning on the master switch. We then have to wait 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, and then turn on the APU starter. So the little jet engine in the back of the aircraft, which is just here, you can just hear that, I think, just starting to spool up. Okay, so hopefully you can hear that. There we are. And this is again some great work by the Fly-by-Wire team in creating these sounds. So you can sit and listen to those in your own time if you wish. Alright, so now what we've done is we have basically set up the overhead panel. That is all done. The only thing left to do is to start our auxiliary power unit bleed air, which is used for starting the engines and also for pushing air into the cabin. It's at this point, if you are using things and add-ons like self-loading cargo, which is a little add-on to create passenger sounds and the cabin crew sounds, that we can start to load our passengers. So if we call our jetway over, let's call the jetway. You can see that moving. If you're wondering how I called the jetway just then without having to contact air traffic control, I have a great little add-on called Pushback Helper, which is free, and the Pushback Helper you can get, as I say, for free at flightsim.to. So I've just popped a link in the chat there, and just do a search for Pushback Helper. Okay, so we'll leave them to connect that up. And if we come and have a look down here, you can see now that our door has been opened, and we can start the flight with our self-loading cargo. Again, if you've not got self-loading cargo, don't worry about that. This is just something that I'm adding in. If you have got self-loading cargo, of course, then now is the time that I would normally fire that up. So just doing this now and starting that flight. So you'll hear some cabin crew sounds now as we carry on doing the rest of the setup.
Cabin crew, we're happy to get going now, so as soon as you're ready, you can open the doors and start letting passengers on board.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so self-loading cargo on now, bringing the passengers on board. Let's continue with our cockpit preparation setup. So the first thing we need to do after the overhead panel's sorted and we've got some passengers boarding, let's turn up the brightness of our standby instruments here, and we also want to set the QNH, which we've already got from our METAR, which is 1008. So there we go, that's all set. We're then going to go across, and what we do at this point is check that anti-skid is turned on. We never normally turn anti-skid off, so always check that that's on. And we also want to make sure that the time is correct. Obviously it's not, because we've messed around with the clock just so we're flying in the daytime. So H&M Infinite Aviation, can I please show you what graphics I have set? I actually have a video on the channel, if you search for that, of where I go through all of the graphics that I've got set. So it might be worth checking that out, as I go into detail a little bit more there. Okay, next we're going to come down to the pedestal. So the pedestal is this lower center panel just here. We just check that everything in the audio control panel is right. It is, it's just the way it's set up by default. Cockpit door is currently open. We can lock that now if we wish, although we're not actually finished boarding, so we might just unlock that just to let our cabin crew come in should they need to. The switching panel then, we want to make sure that we've not caught any switches, and sometimes I do see people asking about this on some groups. Basically, if one of the switches is set, you're going to find something like this, ADIAS switching, for example, and people ask, what does that mean? Well, it means that these are being switched over, and basically, do you remember me saying that we'd got 3 switches up here, 3 ADIAS and gyroscopes, 1, 2 and 3, the pilots, the co-pilots or first officers, and the standby. If one of those is giving duff information to either the pilot or the first officer, you can switch over. So you would be reading off the captain screen could make sure it's displaying the same as the first officers, or vice versa, depending on which computer had failed. It's not really relevant again in the simulator just yet, so we'd just leave those as norm. But again, if you ever get that message on here, chances are you've just switched one of these by mistake. We've already said we want to make sure that our thrust levers are at idle. Our engine masters, of course, want to be off. The engine mode selector, which is down here, wants to be set to norm, and our parking brake wants to be on. Our transponder at this point would want to be set. However, we've no air traffic control, so we don't need to get, we wouldn't be getting a squawk code or anything like that. We'd then have a look at setting the radio management panel. So if we were flying with air traffic control, we'd contact we'd want to pop in whatever frequency was on here. The other thing we'd want to do is then, perhaps if you were flying on VATSIM and you've got the clearance delivery frequency was online, and the ground frequency was online, or the ground frequency in the tower, you'd pop both of those in here. So obviously the ground frequency first, and you'd have the tower set to standby just here, just so when you need to, you can switch between the two with ease. We're now going to come up to the glare shield. So the glare shield then is the basically the autopilot panel up here, the glare shield, to give it its proper name. Alf Mags, thank you very much for your donation. That is really, really kind of you. Thank you so much for that. Just before we go on the glare shield then, let me just check if we've got any questions that I've missed. So how do we turn off air traffic control? Basically the best way to turn off air traffic control that I've found is I just switch frequencies. That way they can't talk to me. They can try but you can't hear it. So that's fine. Sniper 7, where do I get the checklist that I'm using from? Well, actually the checklist I've got, I'm very lucky, it's a real world checklist that I use, but if you get yourself in our Discord server, then there are some checklists on there, and I am going to be popping in there at some point soon, hopefully. A really good checklist to follow. Again, one based on real world procedures. So that's hopefully worth getting. If you want to join the Discord, then please check out the About page, or the Nightbot, I think, is popping the Discord link in the chat as we go on. Okay, so back to our glare shield then, which is this top line just here. So we want to set our barometer reference, or QNH 1008, as we've already got from our METAR. So 1008, and set that there, set both sides. Again, this happens automatically in the sim. You can see that 1008, as I turn those, they're changing both sides. In the real world that doesn't happen, so you want to check that they are both working. After that, we want to turn on flight directors, both sides again. So there's our flight directors turned on. We also then want to check the flight control unit is set to the altitude we want to climb to following our departure. So how do we know that? Well, two ways we know that. Either air traffic control would give it to you, again in the real world, or if you do have Navigraph charts, I've said today we are going to be using the MAPAX 3 Alpha standard instrument departure, which I'll come to in a moment when we set up the flight management guidance computer, and the stop altitude for that is 8,000 feet. So essentially, if you're flying that departure route, you can't fly more than 8,000 feet, climb higher than 8,000 feet without clearance from air traffic control. So now that's all done, we come to the really exciting bit, which is setting up the flight management computer on the McDo, as it's called. So, as I said earlier, I get all my flight plans from SimBrief. And if you guys are wanting to fly with me this evening, you can use my flight plan that I have already created. So, let me show you how to do that. So if you're sat in the simulator, what I want you to do is go to your McDo menu and select options, then go to your AOC menu and then come down here to SimBrief, and if you type in the same username as mine, you would be able to pull in the same data which I'm about to pull in from SimBrief. So if you set your username to EasyJet SimPilot, then you're about to follow through exactly as I'm going to. So just while some of you may be typing that in, I'm just going to come back to the chat just to see if there's any questions or anything so far. Yes, Anthony, I'm not on any server at the moment, it's just me. Jake, seriously, if you just go on to Google, type in self-loading cargo, it'll be the first result, mate. It's really, really easy, so that's fine. If you want to get that, I will just pop a link in to the Discord server as well, as I'd mentioned that. So Nightbot, do your thing. So whilst that's coming up, alright, so if anyone has just typed in there you go, there's the Discord link. If anyone has just typed in the EasyJet SimPilot username for SimBrief, then we're about ready to carry on. Sasha, how long is this today? It is as long as it takes. This is a tutorial. I'm not going to rush it, so everyone can get the information that they want from it. Alright, so with that, we're going to return and come back to our McDo menu down here. So how do I get my flight plan from SimBrief then? Well, let's go to the ATSU menu and then the AOC menu. We're then going to come up here to Init Press, and this is where we pull the information from SimBrief into the computer, not the flight computer, just the actual computer that you're on. It will not put information into your into the McDo and the flight computer just yet. We're just pulling the details and the information from the servers at SimBrief. MFS Pilot, how long is the flight time? Do you know what, MFS Pilot? We're about to find out exactly. So if I now press the Init Data Request button just here, there we go. That has just pulled in the information that we've got from SimBrief. So there's the flight number, there's our departure airport, Bilbao, there's our destination, which is obviously Gatwick. That's the current fuel on board of the aircraft. Don't worry about that. That's just the default setting for the aircraft when you spawn in from Microsoft Flight Simulator. And the estimated time en route is 1 hour 23 minutes according to this. Alright, so that's all the information now pulled in from SimBrief. Let's go back to our AOC menu. If we now go to our performance, weights and balance page. So now I'm just going to bring up in the stream, if I can bring this up for you so you guys can see. Alright, so here is our actual flight plan that we are going to be using today. So what I'm going to do is, if you just bear with me one moment. So MFS Pilot, please don't jump ahead. We're getting through a lot of stuff and we're doing it slowly so that there's no confusion. Right, so what I'm going to do is, if I just grab this link, so if you guys want to open this on your PDF viewer or whatever it is you're using while watching the stream, you can click that link and that will download this this flight plan that we've got just here. So you can just follow all the numbers and things like that. So the first thing I want to do is come down and have a look at our fuel. And this is the line that we're looking for. This is the plan block fuel. Now the plan block fuel is essentially the amount of fuel we want to take for our journey. We need to make sure that it matches 5145. As we can see, that matches exactly. So we want to load that fuel in. So hit the refuel load button. And that's it. Done. Our fuel is now loaded for the journey. We're now going to select page. We're on page 1 of 2. Let's go into page 2 of 2. And this is now where we're looking at our payloads. So the passenger weights, the baggage weights. Let me scroll up. And this should match our payload just here, which is 17680, and of course that matches perfectly, 17680. Another number to pay attention to is our zero fuel weight, which is over here, which is telling us is 58.7. That is essentially the weight of the aircraft with all the passengers, with all the bags on it, but no fuel. So everything except the fuel on there. So 58.7, let's check that that is correct. So it says our zero fuel weight is the line just below this, 58.68. That's rounded up, of course, to 58.7. That is absolutely spot on. So we're happy with those weights. We can go ahead and load those. Let's have a look at the payload button. Press the payload load button, and that's it. That is the aircraft all loaded in. We've loaded the fuel and we've loaded our payload, and those beeps that you just heard are telling me that the passengers are about to finish boarding. Apollo Toxic, thank you very much for your kind donation. Can you be a moderator on the server? Hit me up on Discord, we'll have a chat. Alright, so the next thing we need to check then is the gross weight of our aircraft. Now the gross weight, it is telling us, is now 63.7 tons. 63.7 tons. If we come and have a look at this, our takeoff weight is telling us,
Passengers are on board and doors have been closed.
oh, just be
That's great, thank you.
be courteous to the cabin crew. There we are. Alright, so it's telling us now our takeoff weight is going to be 63.6 tons. So that's pretty accurate, because you are going to burn some fuel as you taxi from the terminal to the runway. So that's looking good. Alright, so we've got the passengers loaded, the cargo loaded, and also the fuel as well. We've checked the weights, all of those are good. Slow Raider, how do you get ground services to stay connected as yours disconnect? Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. That's a simulator issue. I use Pushback Helper, which I've already put a link into, and it's a great little tool, because from that you can control the jetway, you can control the doors, and you can control the tug. Apollo Toxic, that's great. I look forward to chatting with you a little bit more on Discord. Thank you very much for your lovely donation once again. So whilst we've now pulled all the information from SimBriefing, we've not actually set up the flight management guidance computer. We've no route planned in just as yet. So that's what we need to do next. Let's go to our init page. So the initialization page. This is where we actually start programming the aircraft. So with that, what we need to do is press our init request page, which is just here, the init request button, just here. So let's select that, give it a second, and that has now all populated in. So it's got everything that we require from our flight plan. It's got our alternate, which tonight is Manchester. It has our flight number in. It has our cost index of 8. What is the cost index? Very quickly, that's basically how efficient we're going to fly. And you can see that on the flight plan just there. What else has it got? It's got our cruise flight level and cruise temperature. So the cruise flight level is correct, flight level 380. It's telling us that at 380 in the simulator the cruise temperature is going to be minus 52. On the flight plan it actually says minus 53. If there's a big difference, we can go in and change that. There's not a big difference there, but just to show you how we would do that, if we did want to make it match up, we'd still need to type in our flight level 380, and a temperature of minus 53. There we go. The next thing we need to do is just check the tropopause height is correct. If that is not correct, let's just have a look, see how that is. So the tropopause is 31434. If that's not correct, we need to change it. So let's change that. 31434. Let's pop that in. So pause on the tropopause. Oh, what is it? Right, the best answer I can give you to that is after the stream's finished, Google it. It's basically normally the height at which certain weathers are prevented from occurring. So I really am not going to get into into the meteorology side of it, but a very quick Google will tell you about the tropopause. It's basically to do with the weather and how that works and the altitude that the weather is limited to. Okay, so that is our init A page now all set up. Let's come down to our flight plan. So this you'll see we keep getting messages here, uplink inserted, etc. You can keep clearing those messages just so the scratch pad is nice and empty. Alright, so Alf Mags, you've got to cut out the wife wants the Saturday cleaning done. Oh, Alf Mags, you'll have to watch us later, mate. Hope you can fly along with us next time. Thanks for that. Okay, Magic Gnome, where do I find Tropo in the Lido operational flight plan? I'm afraid I couldn't tell you. I use the EasyJet operational flight plans for obvious reason, and the EasyJet flight plans, operational flight plans that you get from SimBrief are pretty much identical to the ones used in the real world. So yeah, fair enough. Okay, so let's move on to our flight plan, and as I say, so we're going to come to the flight plan button now, and you'll see our flight plan has already been loaded for us. And if you check the waypoints given here, you'll see a lot of them actually match up with the information here. So this is our flight plan that we're going to follow today. We're departing runway 30 flying at flight level 380, and it's the MAPAX 3 Alpha departure. The arrival into Gatwick is going to be the Vasux 1 Golf, and we're arriving at runway 08 right. We need to now just pop this in to our flight plan. Most of the waypoints and things and airways are already populated for us as we uplinked it from SimBrief, but very importantly, your standard instrument departures, or SIDs, and your standard arrival routes, or STARS, are not. That is real world. Okay, that is real world. So you don't get those when you open them from SimBrief. You have to do it. Okay, MFS pilot, I missed the flight number. Yeah, I'm not going to mess around with that tonight. You can use any flight number you wish. So let's pop those in, shall we? So we need to tell the aircraft which runway it's going to be departing from. We're going to be departing from runway 30. So we click on Bilbao, which is Lima Echo Bravo Bravo, and then select departure. And as I say, we're going to be departing from runway 30. So we select runway 30. It is the MAPAX 3 Alpha standard instrument departure, so let's scroll down until we find that. There it is, MAPAX 3 Alpha. This is limited to characters, so you're not always going to find the full designation in there. So it is the MAPAX 3 Alpha. There we go. Tom B, would I be able to do a SimBrief tutorial at some point? Absolutely yes. Some of you may know I've already slowly started a quite advanced tutorial series. There's only 2 videos on there at the moment, but the next one to come out is a very detailed SimBrief tutorial. It is all ready to go, and I just need to hit the upload button. So that is on its way, Tom. Absolutely. It's about 40 minutes long. It's really in depth and tells you how to read all the flight plan and things like that once you've created it. So the MAPAX 3 Alpha standard instrument departure. MFS pilot, if you saw one this morning, yeah, that was the cockpit preparation one that I popped on this morning. Let's insert that then. So that's now inserted, and you'll see there's a few extra waypoints added in there as well. Now, I know what a lot of you may be thinking, these dangerous USR ponds. Well, they're not dangerous, we just need to be aware that they are there. And to be honest, they don't really concern us too much, as you'll see once we get the departure. MFS pilot, mate, slow down. We're not talking about our transition altitude just yet. We're nowhere near. Alright, so let's pop in our arrival then at Echo Golf Kilo Kilo, or London Gatwick. Let's select that, and then let's hit our arrival, which we've already said our arrival is going to be the Vasux 1 Golf, and it is Echo Golf Kilo Kilo, runway 8 right. Alright. MFS pilot, if you're talking about the transition, there isn't one here at Bilbao, so you don't need that. So we're typing in, it will be our ILS approach, 08 right, and it is the Vasux 1 Golf. Scroll down till we find that. There it is, Vasux 1 Golf. Then the next thing we get is we get asked, we want to do the Vasux 1 Golf, but it has some different waypoints which it uses in order to fly the route. Unfortunately, unless you have a Navigraph subscription, the chances are you're pretty much playing a guessing game, unless you have local knowledge here. Now, I know that from the charts that I've got next to me that I want the Willow arrival via. What I would like to be able to do is, if you're unsure, just put no vias. Unfortunately, there is a simulator bug which means this doesn't work. So what will happen is, if you choose the wrong one, it may make your approach look rather skew-whiffed and what I call a spaghetti-like approach, because it's just all over the place. And I know any of you that has tried this will have had that at some point in the past. So there's nothing really I can do to advise on making sure that you get a perfect approach, unless you've got the charts. However, when we do come into land, I will show you how you can basically make your landing work regardless of what the approach will look like. So I am going to select Willow just because I know that that is the correct one that that we want. Alright, so let's insert that. And that is our flight plan completely set up for the flight. You must always then check to make sure it looks like how we would expect it to look. At this point I can turn on the constraints. And let's move over into the flight plan mode. Set the range to 10 miles. And then we just start scrolling. So if we just the top arrow key here, we're going to scroll through our flight plan and make sure that it looks like it should do. So takeoff, a right hand turn, and then we're essentially heading north. Bay of Biscay, over France, and then this is the important bit, coming in at London Gatwick. And as you can see, that is actually the perfect approach, as that is what is written on the charts in front of me. So flying eastbound here, making a left loop, and then coming in here to line up and land at London Gatwick. Now if this approach looked like a complete mess, depending on how you'd popped the veer part of the standard instrument at the standard arrival route in, what you could do, for example, is get to somewhere around here on your flight plan when you get there and just fly direct to this waypoint here. I'll show you how to do that during the flight, because we may do that just to cut out this big loop here. And in the real world, that's probably what a lot of air traffic controllers would tell you to do, just to save fuel. And these standard arrival routes are usually there to help in times of very, very busy traffic. So it just gives a few extra miles for aircraft to fly, and it helps air traffic controllers with the separation of them. Okay. So once we've checked that, let's put it back onto arc mode. And we're almost about ready to go. One last thing we need to have a look at, and from what I say now, this only applies if you do have Navigraph charts. If you don't have Navigraph charts, this bit isn't important. You've already programmed everything in. But if you do have Navigraph charts, then what we would need to do is, as you can see from the standard instrument departure, the right turn that we've got after takeoff shouldn't be commenced before 8 miles from the Bilbao VOR waypoint. So in order to make sure we get that correct, we'd go onto the RadNav page, type in the identifier code for Bilbao. Again, this is off Navigraph charts, Bravo Lima Victor. Enter that into VOR1. As you can see, we're only 1 mile away from that, which would make sense given that we're at the airport. That's now populated. We can turn that on just here. And there it is, actually 1.3 miles away from the Bilbao. So that right-hand turn that we're going to make over here after takeoff, we cannot do it until we are 8 miles away before we make that right-hand turn. Other things to know then, again, if you have got Navigraph chart, is the minimum safe altitude for our departure is 6,200 feet. That essentially means is if we have a problem, we need to maintain a higher altitude than that. The transition altitude is 6,000 feet, and our climb altitude is 8,000 feet. Okay, so now back to the final page before we're, or the final couple of pages before we're ready to go. The flight plan page is already set up. We now need to come back to our Init B page. So we've already set up the Init A page that was pulled in from SimBrief. Dougal, was the screen covered? Right, okay, bear with me a minute. Let me just double check that. We actually don't need the operational flight plan up there at the moment. So, there we go. All we've missed then is we typed in the Bilbao VOR, which is now populated just here. Okay, let's come back to our Init B page. As I say, this is called Init A. Let's go over to Init B. The Init B page then is all about your fuel planning for the flight. Now, this page is not available if your engine's running. So if you've already jumped the gun and you have started your engines, then unfortunately you won't be able to access this page. So Nicola, just show people again where to select the VOR. Right, okay. So the VLR is turned on just here. There it is. So flick that switch and you will see it come on just there. So sorry about that, guys. Thank you for letting me know though. Alright, I am going to just bring that screen back up for the moment as we need our zero fuel weight. So our zero fuel weight is just here, which we said was 58.7, rounded up. 58.7. We can then pop in just a standard zero fuel weight center of gravity. So let's just pop that in, which is basically 30. That's a perfectly balanced aircraft. So we enter that in just there. The next thing we need to enter before doing anything else is we need to enter in our trip wind, which is just here. So the trip wind, we've got a very slight headwind for this flight of 8 knots. So we type in headwind 8 and we pop that in just here. The next thing we're going to do then is we can press the fuel planning button. So once you press this, the aircraft is going to suggest you how much fuel it needs to fly the route that you have planned in. So if we select this, that is telling me it wants to take 5.2 tons of fuel, 5,200 tons. We had in our plan block, I think it was 5,145. So that is pretty accurate. That is pretty great. We have currently got nearly 5 tons. That's because we got the APU running, remember, right at the very start. We turned the APU on. That's actually burning fuel. So for this sort of length, I wouldn't have turned the APU on quite so soon. So we can now go in and amend that. So we're going to have 5 tons of fuel by the time we depart. And these figures will just recompute and they'll pop up in a minute. Simon, thank you very much for your very kind donation. It is really appreciated. Thank you very much. And of course, if you've got me on the Discord server, please do make yourself known to me, and so I can thank you personally. Okay, so these numbers have now all popped in, as you can see, as the computer has just reworked things out with this fuel that we've popped in as 5 tons. One thing that we do want to check is just have a look how much fuel it is giving to the alternate. If we have a look on our sim brief flight plan, it tells us our alternate should be close to 1.3 tons, which is 39 minutes flying time. That's pretty accurate. It's saying 1.2, but we can go in and change that 1.3. There we go. So that's just been updated as well. Once you've done that, if you hit the fuel prediction button, that is telling us when we land at Gatwick, we should have 1.9 tons left on board. Well, that's plenty and it's within limits. It's perhaps slightly lower than a normal company reserve, but it's certainly not anything that we need to worry about. And you will probably find that as we go through the flight, that will increase, because at the moment the FlyByWire A320 doesn't have an accurate fuel burn, particularly in the climb, so it doesn't burn as much fuel as perhaps it should. Okay, before I go any further onto the performance page, have I missed anything? So Ryan, your zero fuel weight and zero fuel weight center of gravity tells you it's out of range. That's interesting. Have you popped in exactly the same as we've just popped in there? 58.7 and then the slash of 30.0. It shouldn't tell you it's out of range. That should work absolutely fine. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there. One of the other things I think I should have mentioned is do not, under any circumstances, touch this panel. It is no longer needed. You do not need that. So let's close that box down. Another question, actually, before I do, a question I get quite a lot is, when you open that box, by default, this is all you've got, and I get told, how do I get the center of gravity shown? Well, if you just resize the window, you'll see there the center of gravity is 29.9, isn't it? As you can see there, that will become important in a few minutes' time. So I can close that down for now. Make a note of that, actually, if you wish. 29.9. Close that down for now. What we're going to do now is go to our performance page. So we're going to keep this as simple as possible, as I know I will be going in depth a little bit into tutorials and things like that, but just for now I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible. So the transition altitude, which again you find from charts, the transition altitude is basically when you swap using the airfield's local pressure and you move into using the standard pressure. The airfield's local pressure is currently 1008, as we got from the meta, and the transition altitude here, which you would unfortunately only find from charts, is 6,000 feet. So I can pop that in. If you're flying in the USA or Canada, the transition altitude is always 18,000 feet. Always 18,000 feet. So that's handy if you're flying there. Thrust reduction and acceleration. Well, I am going to keep this very simple because this is all to do with noise abatement procedures. What I will say for now is make sure that these numbers match, and the one that is accurate for more so for EasyJet is actually this lower one. Your numbers may be different, but essentially you want to be 1,000. You want to add 1,000 feet to the airports or the aerodrome's altitude above sea level. So that's essentially telling me here that Bilbao is 120 feet above sea level, so it's added 1,000 feet to that. However, this one is incorrect. We don't want thrust reduction above the acceleration. So let's just go and edit that so they're both the same. To 1120 and 1120. Okay, so you want those to both be the same. Whatever you have set those to, you want those to both be the same. As I say, there is a time when the acceleration altitude is different, but for the purposes of tonight, we're not going to go into that. All right, we will be using flaps 1 for takeoff. So let's enter that. Okay, I'm now going to come on to the part which I am going to cover because lots of people always ask about this, and that is the flex temp. Very quickly, what is flex temp? Well, instead of using full power from the engines for takeoff, so a toga thrust, takeoff and go around power, you can actually take off using less power, which saves wear and tear on the engines. It's quieter. It's basically what all airports, and certainly the residents of the airports, would prefer aircrafts use, and it saves money for the airlines. So we always, when possible, like to use the Flex 2 temp. Alright, how do we calculate the Flex 2 temp? Well, that is where we're going to go now to our takeoff and performance calculations. We've already got the meta, and you've already typed in which airfield we're going to be departing from. The next thing we're going to pop into this website is we're going to take off with flaps 1. The packs, the air conditioning packs, are going to be off. Our anti-ice, because there is quite a bit of cloud above us during the climb, so our anti-ice is going to be on all. We wouldn't normally put it on all in the real world, but for the simulator, we've all seen how the aircraft ices up, so anti-ice is going to be on all, and the runway is currently dry, I believe. There's a quick way to check that. Let's have a look outside. Is it dry? Yeah, it's dry. Okay, so dry. We're then going to put in the takeoff weight. Now we can get this from here, and it's a simple copy and paste. So our takeoff weight, 63625. Control C to copy that. Let's paste that in there. We're taking off from runway 30. We are using the full length of the runway to take off, so we're not going to edit that. And then we're going to come down and press calculate. And that gives us our flex temp takeoff of 63 degrees. So what we need to do then is come here and type that in, 63 degrees. There we go. So now that's our flex temp takeoff temperature calculated. After we've done this, then let's find what our V speeds are going to be, and then we're pretty much ready to push back and get going. Let's compute V2, which is 135. VR, so basically select it, it populates it there, and then you press it again to enter it. V1, 130, and there we go. And that is everything now all set up, ready for the departure. At this point we would do a briefing, so we'd talk about any weather problems we've got, any problems with the aircraft, any NOTAMs or any threats to look out for, things like that. What we would do if we had a problem and we needed to return to the airport. Could we return to the airport? Well, how quick checks shows us that the current weight of the aircraft is 63.7 tons. The maximum landing weight of the aircraft is 67.4 tons. So yeah, we could land absolutely no problems with that. All right. So, as I say, we're now all good to go, and our self-loading cargo passengers must be really annoyed at me because wow, I bet we're late. Alright, so if air traffic control were on board, we'd then look at getting our clearance. We'd then run our before start checklist. So the cockpit preparation is complete, our signs, seatbelt signs, etc. are all on and set to auto when required. Our ADIRs are set to nav and aligned. The fuel quantity is set, balanced and loaded. The flight management guidance system is all set, and our altimeter 1008 is all set. Beautiful.
Cabin crew, we're about ready to pushback, so if you can please arm the door and cross-check, thank you.
Paul, no, don't worry about changing the engine out. That's certainly not needed in the simulator at the moment. Paul Wayne, what about the stabilizer trim? Good question, but we can't set that until we've pushed back and the engines are running. So we'll come to that in a little while. Don't worry, I've not forgotten.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello from the flight deck. My name is Gavin and I'm your captain today, and I'd like to welcome you on board this EasyJet A320 aircraft. We're not expecting any delays, and we're going to get pushed back pretty soon. The guys on the ground have just popped the last of the luggage away, so if you can assist the cabin crew in getting yourself sat down, seatbelts on, everything fastened, and give them your full attention throughout the safety briefing, and we'll get going as soon as possible. Once again, thank you for choosing EasyJet, and we'll be choosing the flight today.
Okay, so we've called our tug. We would get our pushback clearance, at which point we'd turn the rotating beacon light on. We could also activate the APU bleed as well. Poor passengers, they've been sat there. Mind you, it's not exactly hot, is it, at the moment, so they're not going to have been overheating. So the APU bleed is now on. That needs to be on before the engines start. If you try and start the engines without that on, nothing's going to happen. We can disconnect our external power. So again, just to be realistic, let's tell them that we're done with that. Oh, actually, they've already disappeared, so because I've called the tug. Again, I've called the tug using the pushback helper, not through Microsoft Flight Simulator's control. So we've now turned that off. So, rotating beacon light is on. We want to check that we've got the message here saying the nose wheel steering has been disconnected, to be fair to the tug driver. Let's just turn those screens up a little bit, shall we? We can turn all of these up. There we go. I'm actually going to turn off the first officer's displays because it really helps with frame rates if you've got those turned off. Before we move, we turn the transponder to auto. Parking brake is currently on, and our thrust levers are at idle before we start the engines. So just continue the before start checklist below the line. Windows and doors, check all those are closed. Good. And the rotating beacon light is on, and our parking brake is on. After that, we're now ready to push back and starting our engines. So we can release the parking brake and tell our pushback driver to reverse the aircraft. Again, if you're wondering how I'm doing this, pushback helper, fantastic tool. So as he's pushing back then, we can now look at starting the engines. Dougal, yeah, I said don't worry about the USR entries. You'll find that we're probably going to have flown over them before we even activate the autopilot. Okay, so starting engine 1, which many of you probably already know how to do. I should have locked the cockpit door, shouldn't I? So we're going to turn the engine mode selector to ignition. Make sure you don't touch the rudder trim button. They look very similar.
Gentlemen,
Make sure it
on
is
behalf of the
this
crew, I
one
ask
here
that you please
and
direct your attention
start
to the monitors
engine
as we
1.
review the emergency
whilst engine one's been started. I just need to look outside, see how my trusty tug driver is doing.
The one closest to you and note that it may be behind you. Count the number of rows to the exit. Should the cabin experience pressure loss, stay calm and listen for instructions from the cabin crew. Oxygen masks will drop down from above your seat. Place the mask over your mouth and nose like this, and pull the strap to tighten it. If you are traveling with children, make sure you put your own mask on first before helping others. In the unlikely event of an emergency landing and evacuation...
Dark Fury, you can start the engines with the pushback driver active. Yeah, absolutely fine. Some airports require you to have finished your pushback. Funchal, for example.
While we wait for takeoff, please take a moment to review the safety procedures on the card in the pocket in front of you. Thank you for your attention and we hope you enjoy the flight.
MFS pilot, yep, that is my own exclusive livery, as you can see there. And a big thank you to Christian for making that. Tug driver's hat sucked into engine one. I think they have to have the doors closed before we're allowed to start the engines. Okay, so that sounds now like engine 1 is stabilised. Yeah, about 19.5% N1. That's looking good. Starting engine 2. Let's set our parking brakes so we don't squish the tug driver. Parking brake set. And we can send the tug on his way. Oh, Nicola, yeah, we'll destroy all sorts of taxi lights in Flight Sim 2020, unless it's a handcrafted airport, which they tend to be in more realistic places. Goodbye, Mr. Tug Driver. So we're just now waiting for engine 2 to come up and stabilise. Hey yo, yeah, I know, you're right. I chatted to a few that have said the first time they started a Neo engine, they actually thought it had stalled and gone to try and start it again and been told, no, that's normal. So how many of you guys are doing this flight along with me? How many of you are at this stage right now doing everything alongside me? That would be really, really great if you are. Let's just turn up the brightness of some of these panels as well. Brian S, you are. Dark Fury, you are as well. MFS, brilliant. Oh, this is great, guys. Really, really great, and I really hope this is helping. Once we get to cruise, it's a free-for-all. Ask any questions you want at that point. Okay, so engine 1 is now stabilised. So after we started engine 2, let's pop our engine mode select back to norm. APU bleed can come off. Engine anti-ice, we can now turn that on, as we're going to be flying through those clouds pretty quickly once taking off. APU master can come off. We now want to arm the ground spoilers. We want to check that our rudder trim is still at 0. Okay, and the reason I say that is, remember me saying earlier, when you go for the engine mode selector, they look very similar, and I know it shouldn't be an issue, but always worth checking that that is at 0, and you can reset it as well. In fact, does that button work? Let's just see. Yes, it does. Again, well done, FlyByWire. So great to see that that's working. Okay, flaps then, as we say, it's going to be a flap 1 takeoff, as it usually is, so we can set those. Pitch trim. Alright, so this is a question that I get asked a lot. How do we set the pitch trim? Well, I have a little tool that I've used, and if you're on the Discord server, then it can really help you, and I can pop a link in there. I can't pop a link in the chat now, unfortunately, because it's actually a program. It's only an Excel spreadsheet, but the other way of doing it, and the real way of doing it, is if we come down here. Hang on, if I can let's try and find the correct, oh there we go, try and find the right camera angle. If we come down here and just come across, see where the little white triangle is just there, or arrow pointing this way. If we now check our centre of gravity, which is just here, you'll see the centre of gravity is 29.9, so that's pretty much close to 30. Then what you'd need to do is find 30 on here and line that up with there. Now I'm not convinced that these are accurate, because realistically centre of gravity 30 should be neutral, and as you can see they are not. They are down, and you can double check this by, if you go to the flight control page on here, then have a look up. Look at that, that's pitch trim down 7. Well, that's not accurate, and that's why I use a little program instead, which I'm happy to share in the Discord server, and you can download that. So if I pop in 29.9, that is actually telling me in the simulator to use a trim wheel setting of down 0.3, which is a bit more realistic for that. You can't set that until your engines are running and things, hydraulics, etc. So you want to make sure that you've not jumped the gun on that. Alright, so we're now almost ready to start taxiing. One more check I'm going to do. So the after start checklist, anti-ice is on, ECAM status checked. Pitch trim we've just done, down 0.3, and the rudder trim is set to 0. Next thing we need to do is a flight control check. So on this page here, just move your joystick or your side stick, whatever you've got. So full left, full right, neutral, full up, full down, neutral, and then rudders, full right, full left, neutral. And it wouldn't be the first time that I've attempted a flight and realised I'd not got my side stick plugged in, so it's actually worth doing. We can then turn on the weather radars and the predicted wind shear, which is down here. Weather radar, predictive wind shear is on. Confirm the transponder is set. Auto brake max can now come on. Ding the cabin crew, tell them to prepare for takeoff. We then want to select TO config, make sure there's no errors with the way the aircraft is set up. So press the TO config button here. Takeoff memo, no blue, and I'm also going to pop the terrain on for departure, just because we do have terrain around this airport. If it's a nice flat airport, it doesn't have to be on. Okay, so our departure briefing, if you can remember that far back, we've been a while over this, haven't we? But basically it is takeoff, fly runway heading for 8 miles, and then make the right hand turn as per the flight plan. Okay, so before takeoff checklist, flight control set, briefing, we've confirmed flap setting config 1, FMA and takeoff data, which is essentially 130 blue, 135 magenta, climb nav blue, and it's a flex temp takeoff of 63 degrees. Transponder is set, ECAM memo, no blue, and we're good to go. Alright, let's start the taxi. Release the parking brakes. And let's start rolling. This is usually in Flight Sim 2020 where we destroy a couple of vans and buses on the way. I'll tell you something I did forget, the taxi light. That was naughty. The taxi light should have been on before we began moving and after the tug had disappeared. Don't know how long the stream's been going on for, guys. I should probably have picked a shorter route, but I'll stick with you. A lot of the work is done on the ground before you actually take off, and if you ever watch me during the live streams, you'll see that I probably rattle through all of everything that we've done. And it's just practice, I guess. Have we been going for 90 minutes already? Wow. Richard W, that's a great question. Normal taxi speed. So, in a straight line, no more than 30 knots, and when turning, no more than 9. Paul Newman, great to see you again. I shall catch you later for the next one. Nick, that's a fair point. So I'm on idle thrust at the moment, and the aircraft is quite happily taxiing all on its own, and that's normal. Nothing to be concerned about. I do get the question: how do you control the taxi? Well, you can do a single engine taxi. I'm not going to go into that now, but the real aircraft, of course, you press the brakes and you tap them, and you can control the brake pressure. Unfortunately, you can't do that in the flight simulator, as far as I'm aware, because the brakes is just a button that you press, a keystroke, and it applies full pressure. Daniel, thank you very, very much for your kind donation. Thank you. It is very much appreciated. Please do get yourself on our Discord and send me a DM. That would be great to chat to you. Ayo, that's fair play as well. Some airports do limit to 20 knots in a straight line, but again, that's found in the note times and the charts that you've got. Okay, so do not pass the stop lines until you have been given permission from air traffic control, if they were here. So we'll hold that there. Right, we now want to check our brake temperatures. Nick, is that right? I'm going to have to look into that. That would help a lot of people, I'm sure. So brake temperatures, we want them to be really less than 150 degrees. They are. Brake fans don't currently work. They're not modelled yet in Flight Sim 2020. So don't worry about that too much. The approach path is clear. It definitely is clear because there's only me here in the simulator at the moment. Alright, we now want to go and turn on all our lights. So strobe lights and landing lights on, etc. Runway turn off lights on, and set the nose wheels to takeoff lights. We can turn off the packs for departure. We can turn TCAS on, TARA, and it would be tilt above, and transponder on. Engine mode selector is normal. We would run the before takeoff checklist below the line. So cabin is secured for takeoff. Is self-loading cargo secured for takeoff? There will be in a minute. Engine mode selector as required is normal. TCAS, TARA, packs off, anti-ice on. Let's enter the runway. Steve G, no, I've not put that on Discord yet. I will do it after this flight. The King, what's the transponder? So that is basically the little radio which sends all of your aircraft's information to the air traffic controllers, so they can see you and identify you and know what it is you're doing, really. MFS pilot, I think the passengers are a bit annoyed. Oh, they're very annoyed. I don't care about them tonight. I care about you guys. So we're just going to line up. Look at that. I love the fact that I'm being blinded by the runway lights. That's great. Okay, so let's line up and we can hold it there. Okay, so we are all set. We're going to start basically, let me just brief what's going to happen. So, as before we take off, we're going to set the chrono, the timer going. We're then going to accelerate the thrust levers to about 50% N1, which is actually quite difficult to do here in the sim. So hold it to about 50% N1. Once they're happy, and we're just checking that we don't have asymmetric thrust, which is basically one engine spooling up more than the other, then we're going to continue to advance the thrust levers all the way up to the flex detent just there, which again I find actually a little bit difficult to do here in the sim with my thrust levers. We're going to push half side stick down, so we want this to be down here. When we get to 80 knots, we're pulling back. By 100 knots, we want to be level. We then want to pull back once we pass V1, and we're targeting about 17.5 degrees of pitch, which is, I can't show you yet, but it's up here somewhere. Remember, we're pretty much flying almost runway heading straight out until we get to 8 miles. The other thing we're going to do is try and follow the flight directors if they're giving correct information. Sadly, they don't always here in Flight Sim 2020, but I'll be able to advise you on that once we've taken off. Okay, so with that, let's go for it. Start the chrono, side stick forward, and 50% M1, or close enough in the sim, that looks good. Let's advance to flex temp. Man flex, SRS, and runway. 80 knots, start pulling back a little bit to neutral. 100 knots. V1 and rotate. Not too aggressively, of course. And then we want that nose up there. So that's a good target rate of about 17.5 degrees. Positive rate of climb. Gear up. Just going to switch that ATC frequency. We can now bring back the thrust levers to climb thrust. Let's turn those packs back on while we continue out. Want to lower the nose as well. I actually did that in the wrong order. We should have lowered the nose to 10 degrees and then set climb thrust. So, rule a moment for me. The aircraft is now continuing to accelerate away quite nice. We're going to pass S speed in a minute, so that's when we'll retract the flaps to flap 0. Let's just turn down the brightness of that weather display. So passing S speed now, we can go flaps 0. At this point we can also disarm the spoilers. Now you'll see at the moment that we're not actually following the green line. That's absolutely fine. We know where we're going to be headed, but we're not going to be turning until 8 miles away from that point. Our stop altitude though is important. Remember, we were told we couldn't climb, according to the charts, above 8,000 feet. If air traffic control was online, we would have to make sure we do not climb higher than 8,000 feet. So all we do then is just start to lower the nose a little bit to decrease our rate of climb just here, as you can see. We've now passed 6,000 feet, which is our transition altitude, so we'd go standard pressure. And we can now look to start making that right hand turn a little bit. Oh no, we can't, we're not 8 miles away yet. See up here that we're getting that USR issue just here. That will clear itself up in a moment. If you had got autopilot on now, this is where your aircraft might do something completely silly. So if you've got these USR points, then please don't turn on your autopilot at that point, because it may do something silly. That is a simulator issue, not a real world issue. So we're about to get to 8 miles from the DME just here. Again, making sure we don't pass 8,000 feet. Let's start that right hand turn now. So a steady right hand turn, that's fine. I'm just keeping an eye on my altitude. And as we make this right turn, we'll soon see the green line come back into view on the navigation display. You can see now the flight director is actually giving us really rather rubbish information, which is why if you did turn on the autopilot, something would go wrong here. So all we're going to do is, if I zoom out, you can see what we could actually do. Let's just level her up here. Let's level her up. And we're going to now go direct to this waypoint just here, MAPAX. So how we do that, we come down to our flight computer just here, go to flight plan, right, direct, and I said MAPAX. Let's go direct MAPAX. It'll draw a yellow line on there. Let's hit insert. There you go. So now we can turn on autopilot 1. And the aircraft will now take us direct to MAPAX. We'll continue our flight route and all should be well. Let's pretend air traffic control now told us that we can climb higher than 8,000 feet, because they wouldn't hold us at that for very long anyway. So let's dial up our cruising altitude. What was our cruising altitude? I've forgotten, it was that long ago. 380. So let's go all the way up to flight level 380 and push control to the aircraft. We actually push that in. You'll now see the aircraft starting to climb in its own way quite happily. We can turn the terrain radar off now as well. And don't worry, we'll get to enjoy the lovely graphics Flight Sim 2020 has to offer in a few minutes.
You may now use your electronic devices. Rechargeable battery packs are available for your smartphones and tablets at an additional super chats or super sticker cost. Please ask your cabin crew for more information.
Alright, so we're now about to pass 10,000 feet. We can turn our lights off, basically all the bottom row, not the top row. Leave the strobe lights on. We can also turn the portable devices sign off. In the real world you never actually touch that button because it's the no smoking sign, but in the fly-by-wire mod that's no portable devices. The cabin crew can start getting up and doing what they need to do because we're not expecting any bad weather at the moment. So in order to do that, what you just do is flick the seatbelt signs on and off. That gives them the information they need. Let's turn up the brightness on here, shall we? And the aircraft will now just continue to climb as we hoped it would. Passing 10,000 feet, we'll turn the constraints off and pop it into airport mode. Basically that is because if anything goes wrong, we want to see any airports that we can quickly land to. We also want to check our progress page just here. That tells us the optimum altitude for our flight today is 390 and our recommended maximum is 390. Well, we're going for 380, so that's close enough. That's great. One thing I haven't done today is mention the fly-by-wire tablet. I think that requires a different tutorial when that's working correctly. It works very well at the moment, I must say, but I didn't want to get too bogged down with that at the moment. So whilst this is now cruising up to its cruise altitude, let's just look at the chat and see if there's any questions that I've missed that I can help with. So J-Hog, weather radar, your weather radar is turned on down here. However, if you've still got your terrain radar on just here, your weather radar will disappear. It can only show either terrain or weather one at a time. It cannot show both. So turn that off and your weather will come back in. Christian, I can turn off the chrono as well. Yeah, I know I can, but we don't want to do that because well, I'll show you why in a little bit. Nick, you're nervous of that sim, even more so when I take you to Madeira. Yeah, that's a fair point. Richard, is the climb rate realistic? Yes, it is. In managed mode, quite happy with the climb rate now. It's been tailored down. There was at one point it used to shoot up at about 6,000 feet per minute, but fly-by-wire have been on that. Okay, so looking quite good. Let's tell our passengers they can start moving about the cabin. Okay, so we're just going to continue the climb all the way up to flight level 380, and at this point all we're doing is making sure that nothing's going wrong. We're following the flight plan. The climb rate looks good. Anti-ice is still on, We haven't got a lot of moisture in the air. As you can see now, we're above that level of cloud which we passed through. One of the things then we need to look at is the temperature down here. Okay, so if once our saturated air temperature becomes below 40 degrees, you can actually turn off the anti-ice regardless of any high level clouds that we're flying through. So that'll be fine. So just wait for that to happen. So essentially, a lot of the hard work is now all done until we have to start, of course, the arrival. And that's the fun part. That's the bit that everyone looks forward to. Yeah, Nicola, you always want weather and turbulence. I mean, they show different things. Let me just zoom in here so you can see. Yeah, so you've got weather, turbulence, turbulence mode. However, in the simulator, they actually make no difference. They all show exactly the same. The radar tilt also doesn't work as well, so it's basically just showing you the weather. I don't know, I think it's low level weather it's only showing, because we can be at 38,000 feet, get a great big red magenta blob on the navigation radar, and it's something far, far below us, so it's fine. Chuck, is it true that EasyJet standard operation procedure for autopilot is 400 feet ASL? That seems very low. Do you mean when taking off, or do you mean when arriving? Because the autopilot can actually come on at, I think it's 100 feet after takeoff, I think is the minimum. Joe, when you turn off the autopilot when landing? Well, I guess we'll find out. When you're comfortable. If you're certainly new to simming, then when you're comfortable. And I think it also varies from pilot to pilot and from airline to airline. Some airlines like the pilots to leave it on for up to about 1,000 feet from touchdown. Other airlines don't mind what you do. Some pilots like to hand fly the entire approach themselves. It all depends on the airline's procedures and what you're comfortable doing. So just letting that continue to climb, passing flight level 270. Of course, if you're on VATSIM normally for these sort of flights, you've got air traffic control talking to you as well, but I didn't want to complicate things with that. Moisture is no longer in the air. It's minus 44 degrees SAT. Let's get that anti-ice off. The King, if you put the vertical speed and then turn off the autopilot, will the plane still follow the descent rate? It shouldn't. The descent rate is commanded by the autopilot. So King, if you're on keyboard only, autopilot goes on early and goes off late. that is fair. New boy, if you leave the autopilot on, will it land? The real one, yes. If you've set up the flight computer properly, flights in 2020, it'll bounce, I think's fair. Land might be being a little too polite. It will bounce it down. Gavin, should you take the V-speeds from the mod or the calculator? I'd take it from the aircraft and the mod, just because it's specifically designed for the mod. So you may get some strange readings if you try a calculator rather than the sim. I'd like to think they weren't too far off, to be fair. Paul, is the top of descent on the flight plan accurate? It always seems late for me. I have found it a little bit late compared to when I'm using the basic general rule of 3 that I use. But I have seen it to be accurate in the... do you know, I think it all depends. It was usually actually quite accurate for me when flying the Aerosoft Airbus in FSX, but I like to be prepped a little bit earlier than where that leaves it. So MFS pilot, I'd seen that you'd qualified today and that you were on the ground listening at Heathrow. It was busy. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend your first vaccine flight to be into Heathrow, or Gatwick for that matter. Gatwick is a very busy airport. Oh, I knew someone was going to ask me this. What FPS am I running? I don't usually check them. We're at about between 30 and 40. 30 and 40. But as long as it's smooth enough for the flight, then I'm happy. The Aerosoft Plus in P3D can also land. Yeah, it could in FSX as well. It was a great little, great add-on aircraft. So just continuing to watch the climb. Everything is good. J-Hog, are you flying in VR tonight for the first time? Do you feel sick yet? I've seen your landings. you might throw up in about an hour. Nicola, you can't even run it. I'm looking. Oh, well, yeah. It's. Do you know? I think, regardless of what the specs are, I had FSX before this on the same machine, and obviously nothing different. Uninstalled FSX, put this on it, not expecting anything too great, and it blew it out the water. It's far better than FSX. Runs far better than FSX ever was. Yeah, Nick, Manchester is very good for vaccine training. So is Edinburgh as well. Edinburgh's a very good one. Single runway, nothing there. Captain UK, what's the best way to stop the aircraft I thought you said yawning. Aircraft yawing when on the runway. So it's rudder pedals for that. If you don't have rudder pedals or a side stick with rudder control, make sure auto rudder in the settings is turned on. And that will help. Jenny, is the FlyByWire A320NX worth it to download? It's definitely worth it. It is free and makes everything much more realistic. Flight level 350. Joe, what is a VOR approach? Will I do a tutorial on that? Yes, certainly will. I'm working my way on this new tutorial series, which basically looks at real-world operations and bringing them into your flight simming. I'm starting right at the beginning. So far we've got cockpit preparation, we've got pre-flight checks on there. The next one is going to be the sim brief one, and that is a biggie. That is about 40 minutes worth of me talking you through how to create a sim brief flight plan, and then how to read the operational flight plan as well. After that we'll look at importing it and how to set up the flight management computer system. Chucky, did I switch the packs back on? Yep, they normally come back on when the landing gear is brought up. Now, as a single pilot, here in the simulator, you can't always do it as soon as that. That's when it should be done. But where if you're still hand flying, concentrating down here, you can't quickly just look up and ding those, because you'd lose you'd lose the picture outside the window, and don't really want to do that. But yeah, they came on. Basically, choose a suitable point to pop those back on as soon as you can after the landing gear has been retracted. See how the pack should come back on before then, my friend, if possible. They should be on as soon as the landing gear's up. Paul Soxton, that is a very good question. What even is it? I saw, is it Orbex that's released that? Slightly off subject, anyone tried Volanta yet? Antrak, good evening. Hope you're all well. Good to see you as always. Okay, so we're now starting to approach our cruising altitude. Flight level 380. and you can just hear the engine spooling back now as we approach that. CR, in that case it may be different SOPs then, my friend. Okay, flight level 380, we're now at the cruise.
Ladies and gentlemen from the cockpit, once again, just to let you know, we've reached our cruise level for today's flight. We're not anticipating any delays, so we should have you at your destination on time as planned. As the cabin crew make their way around the aircraft, please make sure they are clear on any items on your way to sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the flight. Thank you.
Strangely enough, EasyJet SOPs, just talking about the packs, the EasyJet SOPs are normally, even on taxi, during the taxi, is to turn off packs 1. That's changed with coronavirus. They now leave them on for the taxi. Okay, so let's just double check now we're at the cruising altitude. We'd just check that there's nothing def happening on the ecans and systems are normal. We'd also then cycle through our SD pages, these ecam pages just here. Normally you would do that by selecting the all button. However, some recent update has busted it and it's not working correctly. So if we do this manually, so there's all your engine information, make sure there's nothing alarming on there. Check the bleed area is working correctly as well. The pressure, landing elevation is set to auto, as it should be up here on your overhead panel. Unfortunately, auto in the aircraft at the moment appears to be minus 2,000 feet. So we have a giggle about that whenever we see it. The electric system, you can have a really good giggle at this because this is not wired up correctly. Battery 1 is not off, battery 2 is not off. The APU is actually turned off, and that's also telling me external power is still connected. So that must be a very long cable. Oh, and also generators 1 and 2 are off. Just going to double check. No, I've not turned any of those off. So yeah, hydraulics page doesn't work as of yet. Fuel is absolutely fine. APU, we've just confirmed that's off there. 23 degrees C in the cabin, so they're all nice and comfortable. All doors are closed and windows still closed, etc. That's good. Wheel temperatures 5 degrees, so they're going to be absolutely fine for landings. No brake fans or anything required. Flight controls, and that's it. So we'll just leave those on the engine page for the rest of the flight. Paul, has the all button stopped working? I'm afraid it has. One of the dev updates broke it, unfortunately. It's a minor thing. It's a minor thing. We can live with that. Okay, so what do we do now? We're at our cruise. Do we just go and watch Netflix? No. We need to see how our flight is progressing. So if I now just bring up the operational flight plan again. Where have you gone? Don't need that page anymore. Okay, so operational flight plan. We've been flying for 23 minutes and we are now direct to DSAB. So let's scroll down. Let's find DSAB. Where is it? There it is. DSAB. So we should be at DSAB after 24 minutes of flight, and minimum fuel remaining should be 3.4 tons. Well, if we check that, we're actually ahead of schedule. We've been flying for 24 minutes now, and sorry, we're behind schedule. Correction, we are behind schedule. So we're about 20 miles behind schedule with respects to the time. However, our fuel on board is absolutely fine. If you can see, the fuel on board there is 4.1 tons still. Obviously, that is we should have had. Hang on a sec. I'll just bring this up on my other screen. We should have had 3.4 tons. Oh, rather, we should have no less than 3.4 tons on board when we do get to DSAB. So we're about 3 minutes behind schedule. but that's okay. We can live with that. Let me just turn off the flight plan now, we don't need that. So what else do we need to do? Well, what you would do now, whilst in the cruise, is, if you can see that we've set our displays on the navigation display here to display airports. We just zoom out a little bit. In fact, is that even working? It will be. We're just over the are we over the Bay of Biscay at the moment? I've got the VFR map on just so you've got some reference. If we zoom out all the way. Basically, what we would be doing here, now this is a problem with, again, the simulator compared to the real aircraft. When you've got airports turned on, the navigation display should populate with airports, but it should only populate with the airports that this aircraft is actually capable at landing on. Otherwise, you're getting every airfield available, which includes grass strips. Well, they're no good to us. And what you'd be looking to do is you always want to have a picture of where you are, and what would you do now if something went wrong? It shouldn't happen, but what happens if you lose both engines? What happens if you lose the electrics, or you lose some sort of hydraulics? You want to get down, and you want to land somewhere safely. Where would you go? That's what you'd need to know. And another key question is, fair enough, you may have your navigation display populated with all these airports over here, which will come into view shortly, I presume. But you want to land at the airport which has got the best weather. So you would get your en route weathers and make sure that if you did have to divert, you already knew exactly where you were going to go. So that's essentially what we do. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more difficult to do here in the flight deck, just because it will show you absolutely everything that that you've got. So, how do I do it? Well, the best way for me, and I'm sure you are all familiar with Flight Radar 24, is I've just currently got my phone out, looking at where we are, and I'm basically just going to pop in the airports which are most important to and basically be able to take us. So let's have a look. Let's get the weather for Nantes if we need it. So how do we get the weathers? Well, we go to the McDo menu, we go to the ATSU page, and we go to the AOC menu, and here we've got our weather requests. So if we select that, now these are always populated for you, your departure airport and your arrival airport. That doesn't happen in the real aircraft. You actually have to type these in, because let's face it, we don't want the weather now for Bilbao. We've left Bilbao, we're on our way, and unfortunately, I'm going to double check this actually, I don't think you can change them. They're in green, so I presume you can't change them. Echo Golf Charlie Charlie. No, we can't change those. So let's get the weather for Nantes. Lima Fox Romeo Sierra. Lima Fox, oops, try again. Lima Fox Romeo Sierra. Select that. Where else shall we look at as well? Where else should we go for? We could have a look. Basically, you're wanting airports that are close enough to you to divert if you have a real problem. So we can also have a look at Bordeaux as well. Lima Fox Bravo Delta. Lima Fox Bravo Delta. And of course we're going to get the Gatwick weather at the same time. So once we've populated those, let's send the request off. Okay, so that request is now sent off. Oh, there we go, have a look at that. The airports have started to populate, as you can see on there, look. So if we just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so that's every single airport in the Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 database. That's not of any real use to us, because half of these airports are probably, as I say, small grass strips which we're not going to be able to land at if we had a problem. You'd be safer off in the sea. Alright, maybe not, but you get the idea. So we've now got that company message that's come through. Let's come down here, AOC menu, and I love this little feature. I'm just doing this for fun now. Messages received, there's the METAR, and let's print it out. There it is. Excuse me while that prints, I'm just going to have a drink. Okay, so that's printed out. Sorry, all this talking, my throat was getting dry. Collect the paper, let's have a read, shall we? Alright, yeah Russ, any excuse to use the printer. Although you'll see in a little while why that is actually a really, really useful little bit of programming by the Fly-by-Wire team. Okay, so here's Bilbao, don't care about that. What can we expect when we get to Gatwick then? So, nice gentle winds, 9 knots, 040 at 9. It's a slight crosswind actually, but not too much, more of a headwind. Visibility is good, yeah, we've heard that before. Scattered clouds at 800 feet, broken clouds at 1,200 feet. So in reality, it's it's Cat 1 minimums, no problem with that. Temperature +6, dew point +5, QNH 1003, so that's absolutely fine. However, let's have a look. If we had to divert, where would we go to? So we've got Bordeaux and Nantes up here. Ceiling and visibility is the best at Nantes, so if I did have a problem, I'd probably look to divert just there. To be fair, there's nothing too much between the two, but we just get the en route weather, so we know what it is that we're doing. So what are we now? We are 31 minutes into the 1 hour 20-minute flight, and in a little while we're going to start talking about our approach into Gatwick. So I'm just going to go and grab myself another drink. I will be back with you in about 5 minutes or so, at which point, if you've asked any questions in the chat, I will come back and answer them. So I shall see you in a couple of minutes. Thank you for watching so far. Okay guys, so I'm back with you. I'm refueled. Oh, you know, when I think of the progress we've made in terms of simulators, wow! Look at the graphics. What was everyone's first simulator? Mine was Microsoft Flight Sim 95. And yo, you made me feel really, really old earlier. I'll message you back a little bit later. But yeah, Flight Sim 95. Even before that, I'm iced up, unfortunately. Nothing we can do about that. That is a problem with the flight simulator. Nothing we can do about that. Dark Fury, you didn't try and fly Flight Sim 95 with a keyboard, did you? Hope not. Okay, so what I'm going to start doing now is we're going to start looking at briefing our approach in a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to serve our dinner menu. Please make sure your tray table is in the down position and clear any items from the aisle. If you would like to upgrade your meal to the premium package, please pay the cabin crew using stickers or super chats to help support the channel. Thank you.
Okay, so we're 40 minutes into the flight. When do we start to descend? That is a question which is obviously asked a lot of the time in the streams. And when we start to descend depends upon the approach which we are making. Now, I said I don't want to refer to Navigraph charts too often, because I know not everyone has got Navigraph charts. So, all right, let's have a look at the approach we've got in. Do you know, I am going to clear all these airports off the navigation display just so you can see them. So if we come back to our flight plan, then we've already keyed in our arrival, which is going to be runway 08 right. It is the Vasux 1 Golf arrival. We've already put that in. And if we start to scroll down, if you have got actual charts, then it will tell you on the chart what altitude you need to be at, and more importantly, where. If you haven't got charts, start to scroll down as I've just done now on the flight plan page, and have a look till you see one which has got a let me just go back to the top and I'll do that again. So I'm just scrolling down now, scrolling through, and keep looking. Here we've got a constraint: altitude flight level 130 by Tel2. Now, I have to say that the constraints that are in the navigation computer aren't always accurate compared to the Navigraph charts. However, this one actually is spot on. At Tel2, during the approach, we want to be at flight level 130. So that is very accurate. The next question is, how do I know when I want to start descending? Well, the real aircraft would work that out for you. It will tell you when to start descending. You would pop here in the autopilot altitude selector, you'd dial in flight level 130, you'd push the bug forward, and the aircraft would start to descend. And it would control the speed, it would control the rate of descent, and it would get you to flight level 130 bang on Tel2 at that particular waypoint. So Charlie, the Delzo programming top of descent like the aircraft. But yeah, exactly right, and that's how it should work. Unfortunately, in the Flight Sim 2020, it doesn't work at the moment. So we need a get around. How can we do that? So I use a general rule of 3, which I've talked about in the live streams before, and it is a general rule, and there are things that we've got to take into account. So the general rule is how many, and if you want to write this down, please do. How many feet of altitude do we need to lose? Okay, so we're currently at 38,000 feet, and we want to be at flight level 130, 13,000 feet. So we need to lose 25,000 feet of altitude. So take 25,000 feet divide that by 1000, that gives you 25. Multiply that by 3, that gives you 75. So you want to start the top of descent 75 miles away from that waypoint, Tel2. Now, I always normally add another 10 miles to that, so in this case it would be 85 miles away from Tel2. That is a very basic rule of thumb, and there are some things that we also need to consider. Now, have a look at the wind. If the wind is a headwind, well, you're going to slow down and you can descend much quicker. So you probably could knock that additional 10 miles off that I added. If you've got a tailwind pushing you along, then you probably want to start that top of descent a little bit sooner. The other thing then you want to have a look at is what's going to be your rate of descent. Because the aircraft isn't going to control that for us, we are going to have to control that. And unfortunately, managed mode and open descent mode doesn't always do a great job in the sim just yet. So what we want to do is put a standard rate of descent in to begin with of about 1600 feet per minute and slow down to about 270 knots. So I'll show you how to do that once we actually get to that point. But how do we know when we are 85 miles from Tel2? Well, unfortunately, the McDo, the flight plan page, doesn't tell us that just yet. What you also should be able to do is you can normally type that in. I don't think it actually works at the moment. That won't work because I've spelt it wrong. Teltu. Can I pop that in there just yet? No, I can't. Normally you'd be able to pop it in there and it would give you a bearing and a distance to it. But sadly, that's something else FlyByWire, I'm sure, are working on. Alright, so the other way to work that out is, what did I say, 85 miles? Well, let's just have a look at extending the range on here and have a look at your navigation display. So there you can see Tel2. That's the point where we want to be, flight level 130 for our approach. And all we're going to do is, I said we want to start at 85 miles, so when Tel2 becomes 85 miles using the range rings, we can look to start that approach. So until then, we're pretty much set up. How are we going to handle the approach then? So obviously we're going to descend to flight level 130. Let me just change the mode of the navigation display. Let's have a look now. So if I start to scroll through this, so there is Tel2 just there. Let me zoom out a little bit more, and you can see from Tel2 we then go to a waypoint, which is, there's actually a waypoint here on the charts called Holly, which is around this point here. For some reason, I don't know why, it's not actually showing in the charts, but this approach is correct. There's a waypoint here called Holly. You're then meant to do an arc around to Willow, which, if you recall, we put in as the veer right at the very start of our flight, and then we follow the path to bring in and line up with the ILS, which is just here. Realistically, what would happen would be, at the moment, there's not much traffic flying, sadly, due to COVID. So air traffic control would probably say after waypoint Tel2, and they would give you a heading. They'd probably say fly heading, I don't know, looking at that, 040, 045. And from there we would intercept the ILS approach, which is up here. So they basically cut out all of this at this point there. Now, we could potentially look at doing that because there's only us here in the simulator. However, if we are going to do that, I'm probably going to want to start my descent a little bit sooner than 85 miles because air traffic control may look at descending us lower than flight level 130 at Tel2. So for now, we'll we'll stick with our original plan of flight level 130 by Tel2 and see how our approach is going at that point as to whether we go direct or whether we follow the full published approach. Digital flight deck, you've never seen Holly in the navigation display. No, it is definitely there, but sadly it's not in the database for some reason. Strangely enough, the fact that there's quite obviously a waypoint here in the database somewhere, otherwise it wouldn't have this sort of arc there. It's just very strange that that it's not. And as Ayo has just said, air traffic control 9 times out of 10, well probably even more than that, 9.9 times out of 10, gives you radar vectors in to line up with the ILS rather than following the full published approach. Full published approaches are there really to help with separation at large airports at massively busy times, but there are some full published approaches which require the aircraft to fly straight over the airfield and back again. I even think Amsterdam's full published approach requires that. I don't think I've ever known any aircraft fly the full published approach. The other thing they're used for though, however, is if an aircraft loses radio communication. If they start flying the full published approach, then obviously the air traffic controllers know what the aircraft's doing and can move traffic which is around it out of the way. So there we go. Chalky, do you think we will be able to use Navdata Pro and Navigraph Navdata? They're much more true to life and used by Lufthansa, etc. I don't know. I know Navigraph are currently trialling that. Are they still in their beta testing for? And they're beta testing for it. But I also saw a lot of people have problems with it, particularly then when Microsoft update the flight simulator. So I chose not to try it. Magic Gnome, where do you set the thrust levers after you start descent? Leave them be. Leave them be. Stevie G, it's still in beta. Thank you for that. Magic Gnome, once you have set the thrust levers into the climb detent, you shouldn't ever move them again until you're about 30 feet from touching down, and that's when you just pull them back to idle. That cuts the auto thrust and everything's fine. Okay, so what are we going to do now? We're going to get the latest weather for Gatwick so we can pop that into our performance page. So let's go to, oh, not that menu, the McDo menu, ATSU, the AOC menu, and our weather request. It's already there, so we can send that off. Whilst waiting for that, I'm just going to grab another quick drink, so please excuse me. Okay, there's our company message. Okay, everyone sees the printer as a gimmick. However, I'm now going to show you why it's actually useful. So, go to our ATSU, go to the AOC menu, messages received. There's our new METAR message, so click that. So, here's the current METAR for Gatwick. Ooh, light rain. So we're going to print that off. And the reason we're printing that off, and why it is good, is because we need the information on here to program in to the approach phase of the McDo. And we can't do that whilst it's still displaying the weather information. So let's rip that off. Come back. So we need to put all this information into the performance page. So go to the performance page. And so we're currently in the cruise phase. Let's go to our next phase, which is the descent phase, and then let's set this to the APPR page. Okay, so we're now going to fill in the information that we need for our approach. So it needs to know the weather to calculate things like the approach speed and things like that. Alright, so the QNH is first. QNH is 1003. 1003. The temperature is 06. I think you could just type 6 in there, to be fair. And now we get a warning, actually. It's telling us you're getting close to your destination, you need to enter the destination data. So if you see that message flash up, it's basically wanting the information that we are putting in right now. So we can just clear that message because we're doing it. Right, the winds 020 at 9 knots. This is looking like a slight crosswind landing more and more, isn't it? So 020 at 9. And just watch this, the V approach speed may change in a moment. So when I change that from 131, it has. It's just changed to VAP is 128. So again, that's great that that works. The transition altitude, again, we spoke about this right at the very start of the flight. The transition altitude is the altitude from which we need to set the local pressure of the airport. So the local pressure 1003 rather than the current standard pressure which we're flying at right now. Okay, so the transition altitude you get from the charts again is 6,000 feet. Realistically, in Europe, you could probably set 6,000 feet. If you haven't got the charts, you can set 6,000 feet. The only time that it's any higher than that is things like Innsbruck or Madrid, where you've got big mountains near the airport. It's usually a lot higher, about 13,000 feet. Okay, the next one we're going to put in then is the minimum descent altitude. Now, because we're not doing a full auto land here, then we use minimum descent altitude and not decision height. Decision height is used if you're doing a full auto land, but we are not, because the flight simulator doesn't yet support it. So, minimum descent altitude then, where do we find that information? Well, I'm afraid, sadly, it is on the charts. However, as a general rule of thumb, the minimum descent altitude is usually around 200 feet above the airport. So if you don't have Navigraph, the minimum descent altitude, just put 200 in. It is actually for this, it's actually 196 feet above the airfield. So we're going to add in 396. So there we go. Correction, I'm talking complete rubbish. The runway is at an altitude of 196 above sea level. We're typing in 396, so when we're 200 feet above that, that's our minimum descent altitude. So we cannot descend lower than 396 feet if we cannot see visual cues from the runway lights, etc. Those of you that were with me on the stream last night coming into Bilbao will know how we broke every rule book going. That's the beauty of it being a simulator. Okay, so that approach page is now all set up. So whereabouts are we then? Are we anywhere near 85 miles from... Oh, we're about 80 miles from Vasux, which is the start of the approach. And it is at Tel2 that we want to be flight level 130, so Tel2 is just here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to serve our drink selection, including tea, coffee and cold beverages. Please make sure your tray table is in the down position and clear any items from the aisle. As this is a paid-for service, please consider tipping your cabin crew with stickers and super chats. Thank you.
Paul, where is it on the charts? I can't see it. Right, so if you have got the ILS initial approach chart up in Navigraph, you will normally, that's the one which has got the frequencies and glide slope image of the runway, etc. It's normally right down at the bottom. So we're doing the Cat 1 ILS. We are a category 3, no, rubbish, we are a category C aircraft, the A320, and you'll see at the bottom in big numbers 396. That is your minimum descent altitude. So that's now programmed in. Hey yo, I'm definitely going to chat with you about this, mate. I've got conflicting information. And DH is usually New Boy Cat is category, and I'm almost certain with you DH is only used for auto lands, which we can't do in Flight Sim 2020. Paul, have you found it, mate? Great stuff. So where are we? Okay, we're going to be descending down in a little bit. Let's tell the passengers, go to the toilet now, or else.
Ladies and gentlemen, from flight deck, just to let you know, we'll soon be starting our descent into our destination. At which point the cabin crew will start preparing the aircraft for our arrival, so if you can make sure the altitude there or any baggage. The seatbelt signs will also shortly be going on, so if you do need to use the toilets, please do so now before we pop those on for your safety. Thank you very much for your cooperation, and we'll speak to you again soon.
So if anyone needs the loo, now's your chance to run for it. Hey yo, that'd be great. I'd love to see that. I've got you on our Discord, haven't I? So that'd be great. I can probably bring this map in a little bit now. No, not quite yet. Lazarus, the SOPs that I've got is if you are not doing a full auto land and you cannot see the airport at MDA, you should go around. Don't search for the airport, just go around. Reconfigure. You've never had the pilot advising passengers to go to the loo. That's only because I know what my landings are like and I don't want to leave a mess of the aircraft. Okay, for those of you that do have Navigraph charts, I'm just going to go through a couple of other things here. This is only information you can find from Navigraph. So, I'm actually just going to start that descent now to flight level 130, and then I'll go through what I was about to tell you. So, open descent, flight level 130. We'll roll back the speed as well, and then I'm going to start that descent, as I say, at about what are our winds doing? Well, that's okay, we'll go about 1700 feet per minute to start off with. Okay, so if you do have Navigraph charts, things that you also need to be briefed on. The transition altitude, which I've already been through with you, is 6,000 feet. The minimum safe altitude then for this approach is 2,100 feet. Again, that sort of means if you're in the middle of the approach and something goes wrong and you need to go down, then you can't descend below 2,100 feet without potentially being in danger. Of course, that does not apply to the approach. If you're on the approach, of course you're cleared to descend lower than that, otherwise you're never going to land. Minimum descent height we've already spoken about, and the missed approach altitude. So we discovered last night, for those of you watching the stream, why that was so important. Missed approach altitude is 3,000 feet. Fly on runway heading, then turn right to a heading of 178 degrees, and then ATC would give you vectors, basically. So again, that's just reading from the Jefferson charts. David Gasper, did they fix the bug with the A320NX? Ooh, which bug? Which bug? Okay, let's bring that in a little bit now. Okay, so a couple of things I need to mention, and these are simulator issues. Why do we use a vertical speed descent rather than open descent or manage mode descent? The open descent and manage mode descent doesn't work too well, unfortunately, at the moment in the simulator. It'll get there, but if you do have it working, I think it's it's sheer dumb luck rather than than good coding. So we use a vertical speed descent. We also roll the speed back because we want to descend probably at normally about 270 knots. Now you can see here on the speed tape we're actually a little bit slower than that. Well, that's absolutely fine. So if I want to descend at 270 knots, why have I got this set to Mach speed rather than knot speed? Again, this is a simulator issue. You should be able to press the black button here to change it to knots. Unfortunately, you can't. So we just roll that back. Now, because the Mach speed increases as you descend, where the air gets thicker, you need to just pay attention and watch your speed, because this blue diamond, which is a blue triangle rather, which is essentially where we've set this speed, as you can see that moving as I do that, as we get lower and lower down where the air is thicker, then this Mach speed is going to increase, and if you are not careful, you're going to see your engine spooling up and you're going to start accelerating down your descent, which you don't want, because that's going to throw your descent profile all the way off. So definitely don't do that. Again, that is a sim issue. What I would like to do is open descent and set 270 knots on a descent rate, but unfortunately we can't do that just yet. Nicola 16789. Do you mind if I ask your background, mate? You seem very knowledgeable. Are you a type-rated pilot? Obviously, don't be offended if you're not. I'm not. Look, do I have the Bilbao airport mod? No, I don't. No, we just took off from the default scenery. So, Magic Norm, there's a great question. When do you activate the approach phase? If it's automatic, how is it done and decided where it, and if not, where should it be? Okay, so what is the approach phase? Let's have a look at the navigation display. So the approach phase, if we go to our performance page just here, you'll see we've got activate approach phase marked here. Now, to activate the approach phase, you have to click it twice. That basically, you activate that phase once you want to start slowing the aircraft down to green dot speed. Okay, basically the speed, basically when you want to start slowing the aircraft down, ready for the full approach. It happens automatically in the Airbus when you pass the decel point, deceleration point, and that is marked with a purple D just here, as you can see, and you can also see it on the flight plan. See just there? So you'll see it's marked just after TEL 2, and again it's there just after TEL 2. So if you pass that decel point, the aircraft will enter the approach phase automatically. Of course, you can do that yourself by activating the approach phase if you wanted to start slowing the aircraft down much sooner. If we decided we were going to go direct from TEL 2 and fly a heading and vector ourselves in over here, then we would not pass the decel point on here, which means we would have to manually activate that approach phase to start slowing our aircraft down. We basically, yeah, if you don't pass the decel point, then you have to pop the arm the approach mode yourself, the approach phase yourself. If you don't arm the approach phase, then what I get a lot of people tell me is that all sorts of alarms start to go off when you when you come into land, and basically that is because the aircraft isn't ready for landing, and you're getting very close to the ground, so the ground proximity warning will go off and it'll be telling you to pull up and all sorts. That's the reason why that's happening, if that happens. Nicola 16789, absolutely not. That is great, and obviously please don't disclose your employer if you wish, particularly in these difficult times. That is truly understandable. But Nicola, if you would, and if you do have a Discord, please do join me on the Discord channel. I would love to chat with you more after the stream, if that's great. And that goes for anyone. Anyone can join the Discord channel and get in touch with me, send me a message. Nightbot's going to do its thing now and message me on and let you guys know the Discord link. There it is. There's the Discord link. So yeah, Nicola, if you want to get in touch, that would be absolutely most welcome. Alright, I'm just going to pop a couple of panel lights up here, just because it is a little bit dark under those clouds from what I was reading in that meta. As we're coming down now, those clouds obviously getting closer. The sat temperature is about to drop below 40. I'm going to turn those de-icers on. So you'll notice now, look, the engines are spooled up. And I told you this may happen. And the, in fact, we've now passed flight level 250. Can I actually control it via the knot speed rather than max speed? So I'm going to set that to 250. If you start to see your speed running away, obviously check your engines aren't spooling up. The reason the engines are spooling up is because of what we talked about as the max speed, but also the engines will spool up because we're using vertical speed rather than manage mode or open descent. It's a simulator issue. There's nothing we can do about that at the moment. If you see the engine spooling up, one quick way to rectify it is just select a knot lower and they'll drop back down again. Steve G, hopefully I think I've just answered that question. It's switched automatically when passing flight level 250, I think it is here in the sim. It's also great when doing these sort of tutorial videos that we've got people like Nicola and Yo as well, because if there's anything that I can't answer, I've got guys to help me out. And of course, we all know HD if you're familiar with the channel. We love HD. He's actually busy at the moment, which is great. Terry Campbell, oh, there you go. Where's HD to clarify some of the questions? Yeah, he's not available this weekend. But we all love HD for the amount of detail he's brought into these. Okay, so our descent preparation, weather and landing information has been received. We've prepared the flight management guidance computer. Landing elevation is 196. We shouldn't need the auto brake at Gatwick. It's a nice long runway, so we can leave that off. I've talked through our arrival briefing. Won't need the terrain radar on, so we can leave that as it is. We'll just start slowing the aircraft down a little bit more now. And turn off the VOR1, we don't need that. Just need to increase that rate of descent a little bit, and this is where that rule 3 doesn't always work perfectly. Again, that is the difference between having an Airbus that actually has V mode working very, very well. Dougal, you're very, very welcome. And it's fun to do, isn't it? I didn't want to do a rush tutorial tonight, so I know it's been a very long stream, guys, but hopefully, particularly if anyone's still flying along with me, you may be in a similar place with me. Digital flight deck used to be a real pilot. I believe he's retired now. So our QNH at Gatwick, just double check 1003. Let's get that in the standby. And the cabin crew can start preparing for landing, I think. Oh, Nicole, that's a great little tip. Ground speed times 5. And that 3-degree profile should hopefully work. We'll definitely look at that. I think the problem we've got, the only problem I can see with that in the simulator, obviously not in the real world, is the problems we've got with the speed on our descent. If I went in, I'd love to go into open descent now and it just continue. We'll just try that. Oops. See how that works. Okay, so we're now in open descent, which means the engines will hold that back. You can see the ground speed actually now slowing down, so that's quite nice. Do you're a GA VFR with your private pilot, since this is all way too fast for your liking. Yeah, you don't do max speed in your Cessna 152s and Pipers, do you? 3 miles from Tel 2. Actually, we're not going to be far off that profile now. That's worked quite nicely. So max speed was 250 knots at this point. We now want to start reducing speed to 220 knots by Holly. And if we just have a look on the navigation display, and this is where some confusion can arise, because we've actually got constraints here, look. So it's telling me 4,000 at Willow. Well, that's not correct compared to the charts. The charts are actually telling me that it needs to be 7,000. Okay, now I'm going to pick up a big point here. Look at this. We are now flying direct to D104K. We are not flying this procedure line anymore, and that is a simulator problem. If you see something happening, don't panic. Pull the heading bug. We're now just flying straight and level. Let's now just bring this around, and we will look to fly this procedure. Not hand fly it. The autopilot will continue to fly it, but we can fly the procedure using the autopilot heading mode. Because this is a bug in the simulator we see happen time and time again. I'm going to continue that descent now down to 7,000 feet. We'll pop that in open descent and see how that looks to work. You'll also see as well the decel point moved, so we're no longer, or we weren't if we'd have let that carry on, we weren't going to continue to get that approach phase sorted. Well, I'm going to arm that approach mode now. So let's just go to performance, activate approach phase. We click it once, it turns yellow or amber. Click it again, and that's now armed. Once you've armed that, unless you've been given a specific speed restriction from air traffic control, your speed on the autopilot can go back into manage mode, and that's going to now start to target this green dot speed. So slow radar, the same just happened to you. Oh, fair enough. And as digital flight deck says, always watch autopilot on descent on the approach. It will usually try and do its own thing. We've seen it happen a lot. Let's get those seatbelt signs on now then, and the no portable devices signs. The passengers have had plenty of time to go to the toilet. Look at those clouds. Awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the seatbelt sign. Please fasten your seatbelts as soon as possible. Thank you.
Renegade, that is correct as well. You can use the direct to. You can use the direct to. Slow radar, noted, you're now backtracking. Fair enough. But we've mentioned it, we've flagged it up, we've seen it happen. It's now something else that you need to be aware of. Obviously not something that real pilots need to be aware of. Just the simulator ones. I'd like to think the real aircraft wouldn't do that. Although we know from experience that the real aircraft does have the what's it doing now mode. So there are some problems with going direct, which is why I do like to just hand fly it if possible with heading mode. Okay, so we're below 10,000 feet. Let's get those landing lights on. Should we warm the cabin for turbulence? Look at the state of these clouds. They look good though. So the approach checklist and minimums are set. MDA is 396. Engine mode select. Well, it's norm. I'm not quite sure how bad the clouds are going to be when we enter them. If you're expecting really heavy rain, ice, or really strong winds, etc., you can have them in ignition. And electric flight bag. My electric flight bag is all set. Christian Bruce Willis is still looking for Holly. A new EasyJet Sim Pilot t-shirt. Where's Holly? Legend. Open Descent actually seems to be managing this quite nicely. Occasionally it does work for you. Outer tanks fuel crossfeed is now active. Let's check those fuel tanks. What we got left? We've still got 2.8 tons. That's absolutely fine. So we're going to make that left turn in a moment. What we could actually try, we could try now, and again this is just anything could happen here. We could try now going direct to Willow. These are all named after trees, aren't they? Holly, Willow. So if we go direct, oh, we've got to scroll all the way down. Something else I don't like. If we go direct Willow, will that give us a? Let's see what happens there. So let's go back into manage mode again. Is it going to bank us left direct to Willow? It appears to be. That's all right. Okay, we want to be at 7,000 feet at Willow. And again, that is just from the charts. Nick Burrows, thank you very much again, sir. Oh, the old jam and toast tea. I love it. You're very kind. Thank you again. One thing I want us to keep an eye on now, it may do it, it may not. It's taking us direct Willow. What it may do is after we've passed Willow, instead of following this track line how it should, it may take us direct to the runway threshold. In which case, pull the heading bug again and fly selected heading mode. I think we've still managed to avoid the clouds so far, haven't we? We've just managed to fly around them. But always, always keep an eye on where your autopilot is actually taking you direct to. Particularly on the approach, because Flight Sim 2020 does like to have its own little moments. Christian, you're 100% sure it'll follow all the waypoints now, are you? We shall see. And for those asking, I've just remembered, Christian, you joined us a little bit later on in the stream, didn't you? Christian is responsible for my beautiful, beautiful Sim Pilot livery. Look at that. And we've not got too much ice on it yet. I panicked then when I came back into the flight deck. Where all my navigation had disappeared. Nicola, or the clouds are avoiding me. That quite possibly. Okay, so once we have passed Willow, we'll start that descent down to 3,000 feet. Let's get the landing system on. 13 miles away. Okay, because we're not actually flying a perfect track from Willow, we're almost at a 90-degree angle. I'm actually going to start that descent down to 3,000 feet now. So let's get that done, let's get that down. Here we go, into the clouds. And is it going to make that left bank? It appears to be doing. So I know the graphics in Flight Sim 2020 are absolutely stunning, but at times like this I actually end up watching the instruments far more than looking outside, although how beautiful. We're getting iced up, never mind. Alright guys, check this out, look, just be careful. So we're going still towards 104k, that's fine. We're now going to set pressure at 1003. Does look to be working well though, doesn't it? We might get lucky, it might just give us a beautiful landing.
Cabin crew, about 15 minutes to land.
Steve G, less icing on a Bakewell tart. So there's that glide slope, we're now just coming back into line with that. Of course, if possible, you always want to capture the glide slope from below and not chasing it down. It is possible to chase it, but we'd much rather we didn't. So I know this is a busy time for all you sim pilots out there. Who's still flying the procedure with me? Who's done the flight with me? Hopefully it's been beneficial as we get near the end now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to land. Please make sure you are seated with your belts fastened and your trays in the upright position. Any items should be safely stored, and remember to turn off all electronic devices until after landing. Thank you.
It's great to see some of you still there. Joe, I must be a big fan of EasyJet. Well, I just happen to have friends who are pilots that happen to fly with EasyJets, and I guess it's my thank you to them for all the help they've given us over the years. Okay, so we're now making the right-hand bank to what Microsoft Flight Sim calls CF08 right. I don't believe that's the actual name of this particular waypoint. Stevie G, you're still sat in economy on your third beer. Wow, that must have cost you a bit on an EasyJet flight. Okay, let's see how she lines us up with this. It is working really nicely now. That's good. Okay, so flaps 1. And we now want to start slowing down this aircraft for our final approach, 11 miles out. And we can hit the approach mode, glide slope blue, localizer blue, and we're just watching now to make sure that it captures the ILS quite nicely. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we have to go back into heading mode and fly the approach just to get a little bit closer to the localizer, and then on the approach mode again. However, we shall soon see. Cat 3 single is now coming in, lock green, so we're now turning on the localizer, and that's actually picked it up at the perfect point. We're going to intercept the localizer and the glide slope at the same time. Glide slope blue, glide slope is currently active. Localizer will start to come across in a moment. Glide slope captured. And now descending with the glide slope. There's the localizer alive. Flaps 2. Radio altimeter is alive. So guys, what do we reckon this approach is going to be like? Do you think we're going to have what Flight Sim has been doing quite a lot recently? It's told us the cloud base was at, what was it? Was it 800 feet? Oh no, scattered 1,200 feet. Let's find out, shall we, when we drop below those clouds? Or are we going to have to bust the minimums? I don't like busting the minimums, but I would like to get the aircraft down now. I know it's been a long stream for you all. .5 miles away. Pete, have you been down? Are you there? Did you beat us? It clears. I hope so. Okay, 6 miles out. Landing gear down. Auto brake not needed. Ground spoilers armed. Nose wheel lights. I love the sound that FlyByWire have given us with those landing gears. Flaps 3. Mad Pilot, will it say minimums? I hope so. I'm just seeing the ground coming into view now actually. Flaps full.
Cabin crew, seats related, please. Cabin crew, please take your seats for landing. Thank you.
Okay, so we're searching for the runway lights. In fact, I think we can just about see them, can't we? That's 1,000 feet. So about now we'll look at disconnecting the autopilot. What are those winds doing? 30 knots. We may just leave the autopilot on a little longer. Normally on a clear day, autopilot's off by 1,000 feet. But I'm just going to wait for these winds to settle a little bit. Slightly to the left of the centre line, but it's just compensating for those winds blowing us from the left. Approach stable. Go around altitude is set. Okay, I have control. I just need to correct. Just need to correct the autopilot on that, as we were slightly, perhaps a little too left.
100 above. Minimum. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20.
reversers on, and we'll just roll that out. Sorry I wasn't talking too much in the approach, I was actually concentrating on that. Okay, and we can vacate left just here.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London. The local time is 15:25. Unfortunately,
It most certainly is not. Flaps retracted, ground spoilers disarmed and retracted.
Please remain seated until the aircraft arrives at
Okay, so let's pass the stop bars, but obviously do not cross the next runway.
until you have entered the airport terminal.
And we can just clean her up here, which is a lot easier to do when you have two pilots available. So we want TCAS off, we want the weather radar off, predictive wind shear off. Let's start the APU. Anti-ice can come off, and strobe lights can come off, runway turn-off lights can come off, landing lights can come off, leaving just the taxi lights, beacon lights and nav lights. Okay, so transponder can also come back to auto. So we would then obviously get clearance from air traffic control to pass the next runway. In which case, let's taxi in, shall we? Let's also just check those brake temperatures after the landing. So 365. That's okay. That would cool down nicely for the next takeoff. We could put brake fans on, but sadly that's not modelled just yet. Oh, where should we park? Where should we park? Somewhere near the terminal. For anyone wondering, this is the free Gatwick mod that is available from flightsim.to. So if everyone's leaving, just do me a favour before you do leave, do me a big favour, hit the like button on the stream if you have to disappear now, just to help us gain some points with YouTube. Hit that like button before you depart, that would be appreciated. Hit subscribe as well if you really have enjoyed the stream. And of course you can also chat to us a little bit more in our Discord server, which the Nightbot has been doing a wonderful job of telling you all about. Dougal, you're still covered in ice. Yeah, this is a great mod, this Gatwick Airport, and it's a free mod as well, guys, so do go ahead and get it. Of course, in reality, you would have to get your taxi clearance. You couldn't just park wherever you wanted. But we'll go to some of the EasyJet stands just here. Stand 104 looks good, doesn't it? Let's head for stand 104. Dark Fury, who came in too fast for landing? was that you by any chance? Okay, I should have actually turned the taxi lights off before making that turn. We've just blinded the marshaller, if we had one. Okay. Acupressure's in the green, taxi lights off. And we can now disarm the doors. Parking brake is on, anti-ice is off. Let's APU is running. Let's close those engines down. Engine 1 off, engine 2 off, and oh, hang on, Flight Sim's doing its thing, opening up the logbook. Continue. Right, oh, there we go. Seatbelt signs coming off. And check our rotating check the M1 is less than 10. Yes, it is. Rotating beacon light can now come off. And stop the chrono. Transponder can go into standby. Code 2000. And we can turn off the cross tank fuel pumps. Oh, missed one. Check the fuel quantity. Oh, we will land. I told you we'd land with a lot more than 1.9, didn't we? 2.6. Okay, and we can now grab some ground power if any is available. And request our ground power.
Gatwick Ground Airbus Golf, Echo Zulu Golf Sierra, could you please send a ground power unit?
Airbus Golf, Echo Zulu Golf Sierra, no ground power unit is available.
It always tells you that. If you press that again, press the ground power,
Airbus Golf,
it'll tell you
Echo
that
Zulu
actually it
Golf
is.
Sierra, could you please send a ground power unit?
Airbus Golf, Echo Zulu Golf Sierra.
There we go. So that's who was with me on the flight, who has landed, who has had a great landing. I hope tonight has been really, really useful for you. Let's get that jetway connected as well.
Gatwick Ground Airbus Golf, Echo Zulu Golf Sierra, could you please connect the jetway to the aircraft?
Here's the jetway,
Echo Zulu Golf Sierra, the jetway is going to be
and we can tell our passengers, off you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck once again, I hope you enjoyed your flight with us today. On behalf of myself, Gavin, the first officer, the cabin crew, and everybody else in the chat room, we wish you a safe and pleasant journey from the airport, and we hope to see you again soon with the EasyJet Sim pilot. Thank you for flying with us today, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Nicholas, could I do a flight tutorial from London to Krakow or Luton to Nantes? You'd appreciate that. Nicholas, I get dozens of flight requests. I do try and reserve those for those that have contributed and donated to the stream. So hit us up in the Discord, and that's the best way to request flights. Okay, guys, you could then go ahead and turn off batteries. Oh, actually, we've got the APU available there, haven't we? So we can turn off it. So we've got GPU available. We can turn off the APU. We can then go shut down everything if required. We can turn off the ADIRs, turn off the oxygen supply, turn off all the lights. Fuel pumps are off, and nav lights. We turn down all the screens. Basically, pop the aircraft back into its cold and dark state, ready for the next flight. Of course, if it was a turnaround flight, you wouldn't turn all these things off. You'd do things a little bit differently. But I hope you've all had a great flight this evening, guys. I hope you've all learned something or found it useful. And if not, I just hope you've had a lot of fun. Thank you for supporting the EasyJet Flight Sim channel. It's been great fun. I love doing it, and having all you guys with me is, of course, an extra bonus. Everything now coming off. We have now a cold and dark aircraft. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll be back in the next live stream shortly. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Give the video a like, and of course, join the Discord server if you wish. Thank you to everyone who has donated to the stream via chats or super stickers, and of course via the PayPal links as well. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all again for the next flight. Bye bye for now.